Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this information session on housing and residential life at the American University of Paris, part of a series of events during our virtual week for admitted and prospective students. My name is Jennifer Larsen. I'm the manager of residential life at AUP. My responsibilities include overseeing all of our housing operations from first-year students to graduate students. I'm originally from Connecticut, and I've been working at AUP for 12 years, living in Paris for about 15 years. I am joined today by one of our current undergraduate students. Sandra is a senior. Welcome, Sandra. Thanks for being part of this session. Sandra is French Portuguese, and she started at AUP in spring 2019 as a transfer student. She's very involved on campus in many clubs and committees, and she also works for us as a student advisor, as well as a barista in the Amex Cafe on campus. During this short session, through conversation and reflection on Sandra's own experience as a student, we hope to provide you with the kind of information and housing on the housing support that we provide at AUP that you could expect to benefit from as a student, either a freshman, returning, continuing undergrad, or graduate student. So let's get started. Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. All right. I have a first question for you. What housing options are available for undergrad students next semester?
So for the next spring semester, we have a handful of different prearranged options for new undergraduate students. The first one is Citadine Appart-Hôtel, which are located at 3 different locations in Paris. We will have a combination of single studio apartments as well as twin 2-person apartments at 3 locations. One of them closest to campus is just near the Eiffel Tower, the Citadine Tour Eiffel. The second one is at Trocadéro, which is a bit north of campus in the 16th arrondissement. And the third one is actually in La Défense, which is a business district just west of the city. And that's where we'll have the twin apartments for 2 students. We'll also have around 30 apartments at the Mode Appart-Hôtel, which is in the 16th, very close to the Champs-Élysées. They're all single unit studio apartments with full kitchenettes. We may have a few rooms available still at the Hôtel de la Motte Piquet in the 7th, which is about 10 minutes walking from the Combs building, AUP's main campus building. And additionally, we'll have 30 units at the Musée Residence Hall, which is in the 16th on Rue du Musée. This will be all AUP students, 100% AUP. And it's a nice student community, about 30 minutes commute to campus. All of the prices, payment deadlines, and photos are currently available on our website if you search for Spring 2021 housing options. All the costs for spring housing include at least a weekly cleaning and linen change. Costs always include sheets and towels, as well as an equipped kitchenette and a private bathroom. The only residence that does not have an equipped kitchenette is the Hôtel de la Motte Piquet. All of the other ones have some form of small kitchen in the unit. We ask students to pay a security deposit, which is equivalent to 1 month rent, and that can be refunded at the end of their stay when they move out, as long as there are no damages in the apartment. Now, Sandra, I know that you actually lived at the Musée Residence Hall. It's M-U-S-S-E-T. For those who don't speak French, it would look like Musette. You actually lived there for a year, and you're going to be going back there in January to once again be our RA at Musée. So can you tell us a little bit about life there?
Yeah, it's actually a nice location. We're like really well deserved to go to campus. You have 3 ways to go to campus. You can either take the bus, and that's my favorite way to go because you go by the Seine and it's nice and nice scenic. So you have the bus is approximately 30 minutes. Then you have the metro is a little shorter, and then you also have the RER. Which is the fastest way. So it's actually really well deserved. The complex itself, it's 6th floor of. Usually per floor, you have between 2 and 5 studios, and it's really nice. It's cozy. The studios are not too small. You have like a nice bathroom, a little kitchenette, which is well furnished, and then you have the bedroom with the desk and like all the the thing you may need, like hangers and things like that. So no, it's a cool location, and we also have a little area in the outside, a little patio, private patio. So last year, like during the first lockdown, that was much appreciated. We were able to like just chill outside, enjoy the little flowers, and just see a little bit of the outside world without to having the attestation and all that. So it's a nice place to hang out with people. During the summer, we had a few students like just having lunch or dinner there. It's a nice thing.
What's
And
the neighborhood like?
Yeah, the neighborhood I was gonna say, we have a lot of we have everything nearby. We have so many different stores, so you have different options depending on your budget. You have like one called, like, for example, Lidl, which is very low budget. So if you don't have a lot of money, that's great. And then you have the traditional Monoprix and Franprix and all those things. And you're also not too far from Porte Saint-Cloud, where you have like bigger shopping centers. So it's really well, like you have everything you need, from somewhere to print stuff to bakeries to anything. So it's really it's everything on the same street too.
Would you say that it's a little more residential, or is it like lots of restaurants and bars and places to go out?
So our street per se is residential, but then you walk like 2 minutes and you end up on that busy avenue where you have everything. So it's quiet in that sense because you're like a little hidden, but you have the thing you might need is right there. So the perfect combination of both.
That's good. Yeah. And the courtyard is really nice. I know a few years ago we managed to have when we had students arriving in September, we managed to have a really nice like wine and cheese welcome session in the courtyard.
Yeah, I did that.
Oh, you did great. Okay.
Yeah, we even had that. Go for it.
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
No, I was like, we did that. So every semester, at the beginning of the semester, we do some sort of welcoming. And so I had brought like different drinks and cakes and things like that. And we just sat outside in the courtyard and people would just come up and meet each other. It's a nice way to meet your neighbors and to meet me. Also, I'm here to like help in any problem. If you have any question or any problem, I'm here for that.
We had an RA a few years ago who managed to borrow a projector from the multimedia office, and she did a movie night in the courtyard.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good idea. I'll keep that in mind.
The amount of time during the academic school year that kind of thing is possible weather-wise is not very long. So, but it was fun.
Cool. I was wondering, how can students sign up for either of those options?
So the most intuitive way for a new undergrad to sign up for one of those options is through their new student confirmation checklist. Once a student has decided to attend AUP and they've paid their confirmation deposit, they'll have access to their portal on our website, and they'll log in. And there's a whole list of tasks that they have to take care of before they can actually come to Paris, like getting their student visa, deciding what kind of payment plan they want to use, registering for their classes. And the housing option is one of the options in the checklist. What we ask students to do is list their top 2 choices amongst the housing options that are still available. Once something is full, we turn it off so that they can't select it anymore in the checklist. Then we've been doing it every day, checking the new registrations, and we add the student to the course of whatever housing they've selected that's still free. And we send them a confirmation email, which details the cost, the security deposit amount, and the payment plan. Now, I can actually explain a little bit about how the payment plan works. What we're asking for the spring semester is that students make their first payment by December 15th, which will be equivalent to 50% of the semester's rent. The second payment will be due January, I think it's the 6th, January 6th. And that's the second half of the semester rent, as well as the security deposit. If ever you're planning to pay for your housing with student loans, which is a possibility, the payment situation is a little bit different. You'll still have to pay the security deposit by January 6th, but you can use your student loans to cover the semester rent. And so you don't have to pay us by December 15th, but you can get in touch with us if you've got more questions specifically about how that works. One thing I'm wondering, Sandra, you as a student, do you know, like, does AUP help students move into their apartment? Do we help them get from the airport into the city?
Yeah, so actually, as a student advisor, that's one of the things we do. So student
Mhm.
advisor usually will be helping at the airport. So when you arrive, you can book a shuttle to go from the airport to your location. So that's just a form that you will receive like closer to the date of the start of the semester, and you can request it. And then so you'll have student waiting for you at the airport, and then shipping you to whichever location you are. And then when you arrive at your location, you'll have other student advisor waiting for you. So we're going to check you in, give you any detail we might need to give you. And then we don't really per se move you, but we help you carry your luggage. But then you unpack yourself. We're not going to unpack that for you. That's your job, but we definitely help you. Like if you, like this semester, we had students coming with 3 suitcases. I was like, okay, let me give you a hand because otherwise it gets tricky. So we definitely help you with all that. So moving to your place and then moving into your apartment per se. But after the unpacking, it's all yours.
Do you have any idea how it works to get into the city from the airport if you happen to arrive late, like if you don't get in on arrival day?
So you have multiple options. If you are adventurous and you feel comfortable with public transportation, you can already take your RAI from the airport to your location. Otherwise, just take a taxi or Uber. It's much easier. You just
Yeah.
drop your stuff and it takes you there. So yeah, you have those 2 options,
And I
and it's
think the
not too
taxis,
expensive.
for the last few years, I'm pretty sure the taxis are offering a fixed rate from the
Yes.
airport into the city. And I know we have had a few students who have fallen into a scam at the airport over the last couple of years where they exit the arrivals area and they grab their luggage. And then they hear some random person who says, "Hey, taxi, taxi, do you need a taxi?" And they follow that person. But
Yes.
often those are
So
not
never do
licensed.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
The
They're
only
often not.
taxi that is legitimate is to you actually follow the little arrow saying
Mhm.
taxi, and
Yeah.
you end up outside in the cold if it's winter. You
Yeah.
wait a little bit, you'll see a proper line, and you just
Yeah.
wait there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you never follow someone who comes to you inside the airport. They are not legitimate one, and then you will end up costing you a fortune.
And when you wait outside in the cold taxi line, usually most of the people around you are smoking. So you're also like breathing in all of the secondhand smoke.
Yeah. About housing, do you know how it works for roommates? How are you paired with roommates, and what happened? Like, how does it work?
Yeah. So this year, most of our housing options are actually singles. So there aren't that many students that are in twins. We will have some students who will have a direct roommate in the Musée Residence Hall and also in the Citadine 2-person apartment. So there are still a handful of 2-person options. If ever a student already knows who they want to live with, for example, a friend from high school, a friend from their hometown, or a family friend, they can tell us directly that they want to live. Like if I was arriving at AUP and said I want to live with Sandra, I could say I want to live with Sandra. But we always ask that that be reciprocal so that both people write to us. And we do send out a roommate preferences survey. And there's a spot on the roommate preferences survey where you can put the name of the person that you think that you want to live with. If ever you don't already know of somebody who you want to live with, then you can simply fill out the roommate preferences survey and blindly trust us to find someone who will hopefully correspond to your lifestyle. We look at things like what are your sleeping habits? Do you go to bed early? Do you go to bed late? Do you wake up early? Do you wake up late? How do you usually like to study? Are you somebody who's really more of a socialite or are you more of an introvert? We even ask if you're a socialite or an introvert, would you rather live with a socialite or an introvert? Because some people feel like, oh, I'm really outgoing, but I'd rather live with a roommate who's a bit quieter. So we ask you all that kind of stuff. We also try to be really mindful of people who have something about their lifestyle that's particular. We ask, is there any activity that you do every single day? Like, do you meditate or do you go running every day, or I don't know, any kind of thing that you might do every day that could affect your roommate's lifestyle.
Okay.
That also helps us to target people who might have similar lifestyles who will get along as roommates. And then we take the roommate preferences survey. We take a look at which students are actually AUP freshmen, which students are transfer students, which students are visiting students. We try to place people with like-minded roommates, so somebody who's in the same population as them. And then also, depending on which building you have selected. One thing that we try to tell people this, people don't always listen. So maybe some people out there are listening right now and they know of someone that they want to room with, but they've never met that person. One thing I found over the years is that when we have roommate requests from people who've never physically met or have not spent a lot of time in person together, like they met, for example, in the admitted student Facebook group, or they met via Instagram or something like that. Usually the problem is that you go into it with a high expectation that you're going to get along really, really well with your roommate because you've chosen them. But if you haven't spent any time in close physical proximity with them, you don't really know how you're going to get along. So even this semester, I had an occasion where a student came in and said she was having trouble with her roommate. And when somebody comes in and says, I'm having trouble with my roommate, I always look back at the roommate preferences survey to say, okay, was there something that we could have predicted wasn't going to go well? Is there some aspect of life where they clearly don't get on? And I saw that she had actually requested the student she lived with. So I said, what's going on here? How did you guys meet? How did you know each other? She said, oh, we met on Facebook. I said, okay. It's just, and I know that for some people, it's that fear of the unknown that can be really problematic for them. They would rather choose someone themselves than simply fill out a survey and let us do it. But I think that the problem that crops up is when you have that high expectation of, I chose my roommate, so I know we're going to get on very, very well. And then you figure out that, well, the roommate has a romantic partner who lives in San Francisco, and they're going to be on FaceTime until 4 a.m. every night, and you can't sleep. So.
Yeah, not ideal.
Yeah. So actually, speaking of that, Sandra, in your experience as a student advisor, I'm sure you've seen roommate problems crop up. Do you know what some of the resources are that students can use to solve a roommate issue?
So the first thing most of the students feel more comfortable about is talking to their student advisor. So when you come in AUP, you will be assigned a student advisor, and they will be kind of your guardian angel during the semester, like helping you with all the first steps you may have. So you can definitely contact them to kind of know where you go from there, because sometimes you're like a little bit overwhelmed by all the information you got, so you don't really know where you need to go. So ask them, and then they can redirect you to 2 types of person. Depending on what you need to talk about, they can direct you to directly to residential. Oh my God, that's housing. I'm gonna say it's easier.
You can say it doesn't matter. Yeah.
To housing, and they'll be able to help you figure it out. They might even mediate a talk to kind of see if there's a way to arrange the situation. And also, if you just need to vent and you're not ready to like take really hard measure, we'll say, you can talk to our counselor. So we have 2 lovely counselors, Pam and Charlotte, and they can help you also maybe processing maybe just too much over like the change. So that's why you are a little bit too like annoyed by certain things, and it wouldn't be a prime normally. It's just because you're homesick and all those things. So you have those 3 people. So first the student advisor, and then you can talk to other people depending on what you need. But we definitely help with all those things. We're not gonna let you brew in your problem.
Yeah, and I find a lot of times like a roommate issue is actually just a compilation of many other things that are going on. And I also find sometimes that at the end of the semester, maybe a student will come to me and say, oh, I have such a hard time with my roommate, but they didn't reach out to anybody for any kind of help. And I think that's sort of too bad, because we do have quite a lot of different resources that people could use.
No, for sure. We definitely help students as much as we can. There's no perfect situation sometimes, but we will make it as better as we can make it.
Exactly.
So maybe we can talk now how if we have a place to live in Paris, how does it work? We don't have to go through housing, right? Can we have some sort of exemption or something like that?
Right. So our policy is that all new undergraduate students, so that could be new AP freshmen, new transfers, entering partner students, visiting co-op students, visiting independent students, we require all those students to use one of our housing options, either for the first year or the first semester, depending on when they arrive. For the spring, it's just the semester. That being said, we know a lot of people come to Paris because they have maybe their boyfriend or girlfriend lives in Paris, or they have a grandma who lives in Paris. and they already have a place to live, so they don't necessarily need our housing option. If that's the case, then we allow people to file for what we call an exemption to the first year residency requirement. And what we ask for as proof of accommodation in Paris is some form of document proving that they have an address here, but it must date back at least 6 months prior to their student orientation. What we want to avoid is people like booking something on Airbnb and then showing up just because what we really believe, honestly, is that the housing options that we have arranged are the best options for our new students. And we really think that we can provide the best support for students if they're in our housing. We understand that somebody who knows somebody who lives in Paris that's going to house them maybe doesn't need that extra level of service, but that's why we do that. We also allow students who are a little bit older, who are over the age of 23, like you, Sandra, to set up their own housing, just because we know that you don't necessarily want to live in a dormitory style situation with other 18-year-olds if you're over 23. And we also can somewhat safely assume that you've already had a college experience, or at least you've already lived on your own. You're not just coming to AUP directly from your parents' house. So you're a little bit more savvy about how to get around. So in that case, you just submit a copy of your ID. If you're over 23 and you don't want to be necessarily in first year student housing, but you do want help to find housing, we can offer that. And in that case, you would get in touch with us about finding an independent apartment. What else can I say about exemptions? I feel like there's one other thing I was going to add. I can't remember.
Covered it all, but
No?
I don't know.
Does that sound like it?
I think so.
Okay, good.
There's one question though that came to my mind where we're talking about housing. I know there's some of our advisors in the past who asked me if they could bring their pet. So, like, what is this rule for that?
Actually, that's a really good question, and you just reminded me of the other criteria for exemption that I wanted to mention, which was a medical exemption.
True.
Because medical exemptions often will sort of fall outside the box of a typical exemption request. And sometimes a student who feels that they have a need for a medical exemption, again, like an over 23-year-old, still wants help to find an apartment. They just don't want to be in student housing or have a roommate or be in a shared space with other people. So in that case, we ask for medical documentation from the doctor about what is the need to be on your own. Sometimes it can be a mental, psychological, therapeutic need. Sometimes it can be a physical need related to a dietary constraint, for example. Some students, more and more students, also make requests to have emotional support animals, which sometimes can fall under the envelope of a medical exemption if it's accompanied by a letter from a physician. Typically, we don't allow pets in our first year student housing. Students who are in independent housing, who got their own apartment, either through us or out on the French real estate market, they can have pets. What we ask in our office is that you pay 2 months security deposit instead of 1, because we do acknowledge the fact that pets can cause significant damage. So first year student housing, no pets. Independent student housing, it's flexible.
Yeah, it depends on the landlord if they accept themselves like pets or not. Okay, that makes sense. Cool.
Actually, that leads me to another question for you, because I was talking about some people request an exemption to first year student housing based on a dietary problem, some reason that they need to have their own kitchen.
Yeah.
What do you think? We get questions from students all the time. What is food shopping like for gluten, dairy-free, vegan? Is it easy in Paris or is it complicated?
So it's definitely maybe not as easy as some sort of city you are used to, but Paris is definitely it's easier and easier. It's growing like mushrooms. I don't know if that's an expression, but I like it. So yeah, no, and now most of the stores, even the tiniest, shopping store, will have gluten-free option. Pasta is a classic and things like that. And even in the sauce, like ready meals and stuff like, they have definitely gluten-free options. Vegan, it's getting more and more. In the past couple of years, Paris has definitely grown, and you can see more option in supermarket too. But you have also a lot of specialized. So specialized stores are easy to find. You just type it on Google, like vegetarian store, and you'll find they'll come up with lists. You have even restaurants more and more were specialized. It's definitely not like one every other restaurant is
Right.
specialized, but it's like right around my corner now, I have a pizzeria that is gluten-free and vegan.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
what are the odds to have a
Really?
combination of gluten and vegan pizza? But you can find it.
Do you mean
So,
that
no,
they offer like a couple of options that are gluten and vegan free, or all the
no,
pizza
it's
there?
totally only gluten-free. I mean, it's gluten-free, it's optional, gluten or not, but everything is vegan. So
Wow.
it was very interesting. I was the first time I was like, oh, can I get meat? I was like, no, not oh, I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I made a mistake to ask. But so yeah, you have more places like that now.
Do
And
they
it's
put
good.
vegan cheese, or do they just, is there no cheese on
Yes, they have even some like the meatless, I forgot the name of it, the meatless something. There's a type of meat that is vegan. I can't remember what the name of it, but
it?
yeah,
Okay.
now they even have that. So yeah, no, it's very interesting.
Okay. I know there's a small company that makes vegan cheese in the 11th. So maybe they're using their cheese.
Oh,
Cashew, like
okay.
cashew milk cheese. And
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know where they get, but yeah, it's called like vegan mozzarella cheese. I was like, well, then it's not mozzarella.
cool. Okay.
But yeah, no, it's fun. There's definitely more places, and I am not vegan or gluten free, all those things, but I like to go and experience
Yeah, me
because
too.
even if I eat meat, I try to eat less and less.
Hmm.
But I won't go vegetarian, but I'm happy to find other ways that are better for the earth.
Yeah.
That's not a problem for me. But yeah, so plenty of option. There
Cool.
is some arrondissements are more develop in those, but
Yeah.
usually you can find something nearby.
I
There's
think
no
in the
problem.
3rd, the 10th, and the 11th, there's more in the eastern side of town, a little bit more of that
Yes,
stuff.
yeah, definitely. But it's doable and it's definitely not a problem anymore compared to like 10 years ago.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I know when I was studying abroad, I think that we had one student in our program, this is 15, 16 years ago, who couldn't eat gluten, and she was desperate to find a croissant. But now I know there are more and more bakeries that are opening up
Yeah,
that are either
we have a
doing
lot
low
of,
gluten, yeah, or they're 100% gluten free. So
and we even there's one in the 11th that is vegan, a vegan
cool.
boulangerie.
Okay.
So yeah, we knew.
Check it out. As soon as confinement is over, I'll go up and get a vegan gluten free croissant.
Exactly. So we've been talking about undergraduate, like
Yeah,
first time undergraduate specifically, but what happened for the returning undergrad and for the grads? Because grads don't use those first housing, for
absolutely.
example.
Yeah. So what I always like to try and explain to people is that in addition to arranging for new undergraduate first year student housing, we also have a whole separate operation in our office, which functions a little bit like an in-house real estate agency. We have an online housing database, which is only accessible to our students, and you have to be logged in to browse the housing database. We are in touch with hundreds of independent Parisian landlords who list their apartments with us. And it's really a huge range of options. You have the tiny former, what we used to call in Paris, the chambre de bonne, which are
Yes.
the service rooms or the former maids' quarters on the top floors of the buildings, many of which have been renovated. Sometimes you have 2 or 3 of those rooms that were renovated to make one larger apartment. But those are often rented out to students nowadays, not just AUP students, but also French students. So we have options like that, which usually range from 5 to 7 or 800 euros a month. And they could be more or less expensive, usually depending on how large the room is and on what the bathroom situation is. Sometimes you'll have for example, a private shower in the room, but you'll have a shared toilet in the hallway, which makes the room is usually a little bit cheaper. More expensive
Yeah.
options in that range have a private bathroom as well. We also have studio apartments, which will be larger, more like 20 square meters or 200 square feet, with a full bathroom inside and a full kitchen. We do have some 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, but it's quite rare. Most of the options that we have are studios for one person. So the landlords get in touch with us to let us know when their apartments are going to be free. And then we list their offers on our database. There are photos to every single offer. Well, I say every single offer. Some of the older generation still haven't figured out how to send photos. But we've been trying to only list apartments that have photos. And there's always a little Google map at the bottom that shows you exactly where it's located. We offer details about the cost, like if the internet, electricity, heat is included in the rent. And then the sort of trick about the housing database is that we want to be in the intermediary between the student and the landlord. So if you as a student wanted to look for an apartment with us, you can have a look at the housing database, get in touch with us with the reference number of the apartment that you really like, and then we will call the landlord on your behalf. In a normal time, we'll send you off to visit. I strongly believe it's better to see the apartment in person before you commit to renting it. But right now we're doing everything virtually. So we do have videos for some of the apartments. We've even asked landlords to do a FaceTime call with an interested student so they can have a look at the apartment. We ask the students to commit to a minimum duration of 1 semester and to always move out at the end of a semester, because if you move out in the middle of the semester, we probably don't have somebody to replace you. So we'll lose the apartment. The landlord will find a tenant outside of AUP. Yeah. So this is the same service for returning undergraduate students, new and returning graduate students. And it would be the same sort of offer for example, a 25-year-old new undergrad who got an exemption to the requirement, but is looking for their own apartment. We can also do the same thing for a new undergrad who has a medical exemption, but needs their own apartment. So we operate like that directly between students and landlords. The other thing that we can do is reference students outside of our network if they're not finding what it is that they want. Sometimes somebody will have a specific need. They really want a top floor balcony, or I don't know, they need a soundproof room, you know, all kinds of particular requests. So there's also a page on the housing section of the AUP website called Housing Resources. And there we have a long list of agents, agencies, apartment hunters, and all different sort of tips and tricks about what to do if you're looking for an apartment on the what I call the regular French real estate market, because it's a little bit more difficult. Oftentimes, if you're just looking for an apartment on your own, not with our help, you need to provide a dossier. You have to have the last 3 salary slips of either yourself or your co-signer. Sometimes you have to provide the last tax return. And when all of those documents are in a foreign language, sometimes the landlords are a bit skittish to rent to you. And that's part of why our service exists to begin with. So that, I think that's kind of it. I mean, overall, it's a lot to take in, but the bottom line is that we're always ready to help students who are looking for apartments or who are having problems with their landlords. We also do a after sales service where we get in touch with the landlord. And I think I like to say that a lot of what we do, at the end of the day, Sandra, you're probably aware of this because you're French, but you also speak perfect English. A lot of what we do is like cultural translation, because there are certain aspects to life day to day in a Parisian apartment that if you've never lived in France aren't familiar to you, and especially if you've never lived on your own, if you've always lived at your parents' house. So,
for example, no AC, people. There's no AC in France. So, you know, in your little chambre de bonne, you're going to freeze a little bit in winter. So that's why you have extra like blankets.
Yeah,
and in the summer, you're going to boil.
And there are no dryers.
No dryers. Yeah, there's no space. But you have a lot of like those, how do you call it? You know, you go in the street, like in the neighborhood, you'll have laundromats. So that's not a problem.
And you can go,
you
can wash your laundry at home and then put it in your little shopping cart and bring it to the laundromat to dry it for €1 every 10 minutes. And usually after about 25 minutes it's dry.
Yeah, because those are professional things, so it dry very quickly.
Exactly.
But if you're in a chambre de bonne, you don't have that little washing machine either. There's no space.
This is true. This is true. And if you're on the top floor of a building where you don't have great insulation, the windows are going to be old. In the winter, it's going to take 3 days for your dark load to dry.
True. Very true. I didn't think about that. That's why I usually take it to the laundromat. I'm like, nah, I'm not going through that. It takes too much space in the room anyway.
Yeah.
While it dries. There's maybe one question. You know, you were talking about moving out like on certain time. What happened like when? But can we keep our stuff somewhere? Are we allowed to stay over? Like, how does it work? Like the whole like moving out or staying in?
Yeah. So for first year undergraduates who are in one of our housing options like Citadine or Musée, there's usually, well, I shouldn't say there is a definitive move out date because the billing goes through AUP. So there's a move in and a move out date. When you paid for the semester, you've paid up until a certain date, and we expect you to move out by that date. If ever you wanted to stay longer, it really would just depend on which residence you're in and what the availability there is going to be. I think for next summer, for example, maybe we would be able to arrange for overstay depending on the room, but we'd also have to figure out how much we would charge and how we would bill for it. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
If you're in an independent apartment, normally the way it works is you have a furnished 12-month lease. You have to give 1 month's notice before you want to move out. So let's say you are planning to move out on June 1st. We expect you to send a letter to your landlord on May 1st, just so they have a heads up that you're going to move out. If you want to stay longer, if you want to stay into the summer, normally the 12-month lease just automatically renews. So if you signed for September 1st, your landlord's expecting you to stay until September 1st of the next year. The landlords know that you're a student and that you might leave for the summer. Or they know that if you're staying, you might want to end up staying for 2 or 3 years, which a lot of people end up doing. In terms of like where to put your stuff and how to move out, this is always a big challenge in Paris. I try to sensibiliser, in French we would say, students and parents that we're essentially in Manhattan, if you think about it from an American context. And there's not a lot of space, and space costs a lot. So we don't have any storage as a university, as an entity. We can reference students to different storage companies that have locations, but they're usually around the periphery of the city, like Porte de Saint-Ouen, Porte de Saint-Cloud. Yeah. There's one in town in the 13th that I know of, in the Butokai, but it's more expensive because it's in the city. And we don't really have like a moving company to recommend. And what I usually find, since all of the apartments are furnished, when students talk about moving, they're talking more about moving suitcases and duffel bags of stuff. So it doesn't really make sense to hire a van or a driver or something like that. Let's say in the worst case scenario, you had a couple suitcases that you knew you couldn't bring home for the summer because you just had too much stuff. You can just get a taxi and bring some of it over to a storage space. A taxi is going to cost a maximum taxi across town is probably going to cost 40 euros. I mean, at the most. And I think if you hire a mover, it's going to be at least 100. So, yeah.
Sure. And also what you can do too is students, you can ask friends. You probably have going to be you're going to have a friend staying over either Christmas or summer, and you're going to be like, make your nice eyes and be like, hey, can you save me that box? I've done that a couple of times. My place is not big, but I can definitely
You've stored stuff for people because you're staying around.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
So like, you keep a little bag of extra thing they don't want to bother bringing home because they have to bring it back and things like that.
Yeah.
And also a lot of students have done is take a storage unit, but add multiple students.
Oh, okay. That's
it
cool.
costs less.
Yeah.
And so you can take a little bit bigger. The difference of price is not huge, and you can put 2 or 3 students in one storage unit. And like that, it's convenient. It's not too expensive and things like that. So there's different option. You're gonna start to know people. You're gonna make friends. You're gonna figure this out, and you can also ask your student advisor at that point, and they can help you to do that too. And
I was gonna say that I think the best option also is to ask a friend, especially if you have a friend that's gonna be staying over the summer. It's just easier to deal with dropping your stuff at a friend's house. Another thing that some students can do is, for example, if you're leaving in May and you have arranged for a new apartment with us from September, sometimes the landlord will have a storage space in the building. In French, it's called a cave, or the cellar space. Maybe there's a cellar space associated with the apartment that you're going to rent, and the landlord doesn't mind keeping a couple of suitcases in the storage space for you. Most of the time, at least when this is through our office, the landlords are happy to do it free of charge. The only problem that can crop up is then the case where the student, for whatever reason, decides not to come back and the stuff is still here. We have a landlord who has 3 humongous trash bags of clothes from a student who left in March during the first confinement. And we're still trying to figure out what to do with it. So,
well, we can donate them.
We can what? Donate? Yeah, maybe we will. Yeah, you're the queen of that, right?
Exactly. You do that like after a month or 2 months. It's ours.
Yeah.
That's cool. And one thing, like, for undergrad, it's not really the question, but from some graduate, they might want to come in earlier, you know, like a month before, travel a little bit. How does it work? Can they move in earlier? Can they find something earlier or not really?
It's a really good question. And I think at this point in time, I don't have a great answer for it. And the reason why is because the way that we work specifically with grads and for independent apartments has changed thanks to or because of COVID, however you want to see it. What we used to do with graduate students is we told them all that we could only accommodate them from the start of their orientation.
Okay.
So for the spring, for example, it would have been from like the 15th of January. And we would have gotten temporary accommodation for them and met with them individually, sent them off to visit an apartment, and then booked the apartment for them and had them move in. So in the past, we would not have been able to accommodate them earlier than their orientation arrival date. But now we've changed a little bit. So for this spring, we would be able to accommodate an earlier arrival. Because we would do a Teams meeting, a Microsoft Teams meeting with the student while they were still at home, wherever home may be. And we would meet with them, look through the housing database with them, select an apartment with them, contact the landlord, and then we would try to arrange it so that the student could send a wire transfer to pay the security deposit in advance. And then when the student arrives in Paris, whatever day that is, they just take a taxi straight to their apartment, meet the landlord, get the keys, and move in. So as it stands now, we could accommodate a graduate student arriving, you know, I would say probably maximum up to a month prior to the date that they're like expected to start orientation. But we still haven't quite worked out how we're going to do it for next fall, for example. Are we going to do some hybrid of our old system and our new system? Or are we just going to completely move to our new system? We're going to go back to the old system. I'm not really sure yet. But I think I could comfortably say that we are happy to try and accommodate a grad or an older undergrad who wants an independent apartment and is arriving, you know, up to a few weeks prior to their normal move-in date. But we're still in this in-between of like, in French, they say le monde d'avant, the world before and the world after of what is our new protocol, what is our new system. It's all still kind of in flux.
I mean, there's always, I guess, a situation where the student could have booked an Airbnb and
exactly
as you want. I mean, as his visa allows too, because there's a visa to take into consideration.
And Airbnbs right now are all empty. So
and they're cheap.
And they're
people
cheap.
Want to get them filled. So definitely that's the time to use an Airbnb.
Yeah. And you know what else I've noticed? In our independent apartment offerings, I feel that we have gotten a lot of new landlords in the last 4 or 5 months because they used to rent on platforms such as Airbnb or other platforms that are designated to tourists, and there aren't any tourists. So we actually have a nicer level of apartment offerings than we used to have, which means that I had some of our old-time landlords calling saying, but Jennifer, how come you haven't rented my room? And I say, well, doesn't look as nice.
You update it.
Yeah, you have to have an interior designer come and redo it because it doesn't look as nice.
Do some painting and buy some shell and you'll be better.
Yeah.
Well, that was good.
I think we did the rounds. Do you have any other questions for me that you can think of?
As of like right now, I think we covered most of it.
Yeah.
I think everything we could think of. After you have always those like very specific case. But I think the students should be more comfortable, I hope, to now take the plane and come.
Yeah.
Not as stressed or as worried or as like wondering what's gonna happen. So
it's nerve-wracking. It's definitely nerve-wracking. And a lot of times when I see a student like during orientation week who's really frazzled, I say, look, this is normal. You are starting college, moving to a metropolis, which you've maybe never lived in before, and moving to a new country. It's a lot to take on and transition to. Yeah. And to figure out all at once. Okay. Well, Sandra, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you about housing. For everybody logging in, I just want to thank you for joining this session and for your continued interest in AUP. We look forward to welcoming you sometime in the future. Hope that you'll be coming to campus. We'll be stopping the live stream for the moment. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out either to your admissions counselor or email admissions@aup.edu. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll see you soon at AUP. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.